This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Brent Barnett, and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Coming up in today's show, Brent Barnett will conclude his coverage of President Biden's visit to Menlo last week. And I will also talk with Greg Tylka of the SCN Coalition to get his predictions on what the soybean cyst nematode situation may look like for our state coming up during this growing season. But first, let's take a rundown of those markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, it's time to run down how the markets ended up here on this Tuesday, and for that, we talked to Robin Schmahl. He is with Ag Dairy, which is a partner of agmarket.net with John Stewart and Associates. Robin, thank you for taking the time to visit with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
So we had a little bit of it looked like a setback into the red with that grain market today. Tell us what's been going on.
Well, really, we've got a number of things that would, in essence, still remain supportive under the market, but the trajectory of the market's been going higher and higher and higher. It's healthy for the market to take a little bit of a setback. Now, a part of it is that we were looking at, first of all, dryness in the market pushed it higher. Then too wet with some planting delays. We did have a little bit slower planting pace than the 5-year average at 4%, which still really isn't that much different than 6% 5-year average. But now we're looking at, after this week, a potentially better week. Now, traders started focusing on that, I think, a little bit, that we could start moving, get some field work done. I mean, we can plant a lot of stuff in a week. Not saying that's all going to get planted in the first week, the 50% or whatever, but you start focusing on that. Soybean market, was trying to hold up fairly well. Didn't really get a whole lot of support, running behind on exports a little bit. We've got the larger acres are coming into play potentially, but they are trying to hold up there fairly well. Planting is really just getting started. Again, we're looking at potential for some better weather as we come across. Soybean oil really didn't provide a whole lot of support today. So the market kind of drifted on the wheat side. We did see a decrease in crop conditions of 2%, down to 30% good to excellent. That's the lowest it's been since 1996. But the market really didn't care today. Just took a setback in the wheat market. We've got some time to make up some of those crop conditions yet. We are long in a lot of those markets. The funds bought quite a bit last week, and there's a little bit of concern over that. And maybe there was a little bit of profit taking, just in case.
Now, I know here in Iowa, we've been dealing with a lot of dry soils. And so, we'd like to see some of that crop in the ground already. But, with the dryness and getting some moisture, we're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. And nobody's really pushing the panic button here yet. But how are things looking in your neck of the woods? How soon do you think you'll be ready to go planting in your area?
We're probably looking at, I would say if we got good weather right now, it would take at least about 2 weeks that we could really start getting going. Soils are cold. Really doesn't pay to do much earlier than that. But we're somewhat wet at this point in time. So I believe that it'd probably be about 2 weeks for some of the early ones to get started.
Okay. And what about on the livestock side of things? How did they take the news today with grains going down a little bit? What kind of selling did they see or purchasing did they see?
Well, livestock got a little bit of support based off of some of the lower grain prices. There's that correlation that still is there. Nothing really exciting. Livestock was probably more supported today by $1 higher trade in the South. We traded at $1.40 on some light trade, $1 higher than last week. Boxed beef prices at midday were a little bit higher. Choice was up 4 cents. Select was up 79 cents. that was probably the bigger support under the market versus the pressure on the corn. So the cattle feedlots were hoping for some higher prices this week, and looked a little bleak there yesterday. But now that we've got a little bit of light trade, some of the south or the north is holding out for some higher prices yet. So there hasn't been really any trade taking place in there.
What about on the hogs? What did you see there?
Well, the hogs were kind of interesting today because we were holding for a while, and then in the last 2 hours of trade, we saw some pressure coming in, brought the market down. In the last 15 minutes of trade, we saw quite a bit of volatility, but it did end lower. Now, that was interesting because the National Direct morning report for hogs was up $5.64, and cutouts were up 207. Now, we don't know exactly where that's going to end, but the market was waiting for cutouts to go higher. And yesterday, the market rallied a lot. Cutouts really didn't go higher, but today they went higher. So then the market set back. So it might have been a situation of being a little bit over exuberant yesterday. Now it's pulling back to where it should be. There's a lot of premium between the May contract and the index and cash underneath. And we've only got about three to 4 weeks before that has to converge. So that'll be really interesting to see if we can make up that $13, $14 difference. The trade seems to believe that we're going to be moving up that much on cash. So that will be interesting to see. Now, the other thing on the hog situation and the beef as well is the avian flu situation, where just in your state of Iowa, 14 flocks have the avian flu in Iowa, and there's 17 states that are dealing with it right now. And that could push more demand toward beef and for pork. And the anticipation is that pork supplies are going to continue to tighten as we move through the summer.
Now, we don't always get a lot of time to talk about your area of expertise there with dairy, but what have we been seeing the last couple of days in that marketplace?
Well, dairy's been volatile, and sometimes it's even more volatile than you see in the grains or livestock. We have seen prices had increased last week, holiday shortened week. We saw cheese prices go up, butter prices stay somewhat stable. Then this week we came out and we had a divergence in cheese prices yesterday, but futures went down a little bit. Today, futures fell apart. We had a decline in all 5 categories of the spot trading that takes place about midday, and that put a lot of pressure. Class 3 futures fell as far as 75 cents a hundredweight. Class 4 was down about 55 cents a hundredweight. We saw butter futures, everything go down. The cash prices, blocks were down 3 3/4 cents today. The 236 barrels were down 2 cents. Dry whey down 1/2 cent. Grade A non-fat dry milk down 2.5, and butter was down 2 1/4. Now, butter is the interesting one because butter established a range early in the year. And now lately, for about the last 2 months, it's been trading sideways. And we see no premium in butter futures. That's interesting because generally there's a premium in the futures, but there's no premium in the futures. Trade, and actually some of the later contracts have a discount. That's very unusual in that market, and initially at least indicates that we're going to see sufficient supply for demand.
All right. Well, a lot of great information, Robin. We thank you as always. If people want to get in touch with the folks at agmarket.net to talk some of the market strategies, how do they do that?
They can call me directly at 877-256-3253, or they can go on to agmarket.net. The phone number's on there, contact information is on there, and feel free to contact us.
All right, Robin, we thank you for the insight as always and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thank you, Dustin.
That again was Robin Schmahl of Ag Dairy, who is with agmarket.net under John Stewart and Associates. We'll take a look at the closing market numbers now. That's courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. July corn closed down 7 1/4 at $7.99 3/4. December new crop down 2 3/4 at $7.47. July beans down 1 1/2 at $16.91 3/4. November new crop down 1/2 at $15.20 1/2. Soy meal was down 70 cents at $4.59.60. Soy oil up 11 cents at $78.20. July Chicago wheat down 19 3/4 at 11.09 even. Minneapolis wheat down 5 3/4 at 11.72 1/4. Kansas wheat down 12 3/4 at 11.76 1/4. July oats was down 9 3/4 at 7.37 even. On the livestock side, June live cattle 77 cents higher at 136.57. May feeders were up $1.62 at 160.77. June lean hogs down $1.07 at 121.32. Pork cutouts down 62 cents at 127.40. Class 3 milk for April down 3 cents at 24.27. And that's been a check of your market recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association, and the Soybean Checkoff. And when we come back, Brent Barnett will wrap up his coverage of President Biden's visit last week to Menlo, Iowa. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Last week, President Biden visited Menlo, Iowa to talk E15, infrastructure, and more. We got a lot of great content from his visit, and Brent Barnett concludes his reports on what the president had to say during his trip to Iowa.
Thanks, Dustin. In our final report from President Biden's visit to Iowa last week, we hear his closing remarks from his speech, where he talked about building a healthier economy and more jobs for rural Americans.
Let me close with this. When I was running for office, I heard it 1,000 times. We're going to build an economy around you, the communities who feed and fuel our nation. Well, we are. We are. We're going to deal in people and places that had been left out and left behind for a long time. We're making progress. Over the course of my presidency, our recovery has now created 7.9 million jobs in almost 14 months. More jobs created over the first 14 months of any president in American history. And in 2021, our economy created more jobs in rural America than occurred in the last 15 years. So I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been in my whole life. And my doc, I had an aneurysm when I was much younger, and I was put in the hospital. I was a senator. And he started explaining to me what an aneurysm was. I said, I don't need to know. He said, I'm just going to take the top of your head off and do something with it. And I said, no, you do your job, I'll do mine. I'll be the patient. And after it was all over, he said, you know what your problem is, Senator? Or the senator? And I said, no. He said, you're a congenital optimist. And I am, because I'm an American. That's why I'm optimistic, because I see a future that's within our grasp, no hyperbole. We're the only nation on earth. This is not pure chauvinism, this is truth. We're the only nation on earth, if you think about it, that's come out of every major crisis stronger than when we went in. We just didn't go back to where we were, we came out stronger. Literally every major crisis we faced, we turned into an opportunity. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. With all of you, I can't thank you enough for all the work you put in, all the faith you have in your state, your community, your country. And I just want to say, God bless you all. And every time I walk out of my Grandpa Finnegan's house up in Scranton, which died when Cole died, it's coming back. Every time you walk out the door and you yell, Joey, keep the faith. And then one of my grandmother or my aunt would yell, no, Joey, spread it. Let's go spread the faith. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You can continue following our news coverage by visiting our website, iowaagnet.com, and our social media channels. For the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Brent Barnett.
Thanks, Brent. I want to take this moment to add a little bit of an editorial note for you. Brent Barnett has filed his last story with us at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. For almost 2 years, he's been a co-worker, a trusted partner, and more so, a friend. We wish him all the best in his future endeavors and know that Brent will be a strong voice for agriculture here across the state in the future. Now let's take a look at the Ag Weather Outlook. Well, that back and forth weather pattern we've been seeing for the last few days of sunny one day, rainy the next seems to be continuing. We are seeing some sunshine, but increasing clouds over much of the state as the rain will start to move in again later tonight and looks to be all but certain in our forecast across the state for tomorrow. Let's take a look at what the National Weather Service says for the next 24 hours. As we look at the weather, we saw today start out with partly cloudy skies, but clouds increased throughout the day. There was a chance of some rain and snow mixed in the northwest part of the state. Highs were in the mid-40s to the mid-50s. Now tonight we're going to see those clouds really thicken up and the chances of rain will start to increase. Temps will start to cool down to the upper 30s to the mid-40s across most of the state. And then tomorrow we're going to see rain shower activity and highs that will range from the low 50s in the northeast to the mid-60s in the central and southwestern parts of the state. In fact, it's the northeast corner of Iowa that's really not going to see much change in temperature from today to tomorrow. Now taking a look at the affiliate weather map, we see tomorrow Cherokee will see some rain shower activity at a high of 59. Shenandoah expecting rain in 64. Des Moines rain in 57. Albia rain in 55. Waterloo, they should see some rain shower activity in 51. And Clinton, rain showers and 53. Waterloo and Clinton, again, as we said earlier, not going to see much of a difference tomorrow over today. For more detailed forecasts, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliates. That's been a check of our Ag Weather Outlook. When we come back after this quick break on AMPM, I'll sit down and visit with Greg Tylka of the SCN Coalition and Iowa State University to get his predictions for what the nematode population may look like in 2022. This is Ag Matters PM.
As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. For years now, we've been fighting soybean cyst nematodes across the soybean fields of Iowa and the rest of the Midwest. We've had a good weapon in our toolbox, but like any good enemy, they found a way to adapt. Now, with talk of increases of soybean acres in 2022, we may have a tougher fight on our hands than we've had before. I caught up with Greg Tylka of the SCN Coalition and Iowa State University, and he talks about what he expects to see in the soybean fields of Iowa in 2022.
We are seeing extremely high numbers. Soybean cyst nematode thrives in hot, dry soils, and we're coming off of 2 years of dry soils through large parts of the state of Iowa, and the numbers don't lie. We have 9 main field experiments that are located in the 9 crop reporting districts across Iowa. We pull soil samples from every research plot in addition to taking yields, and we saw extremely high SCN egg counts both in the fall of 2020 and in the fall of 2021. And that's particularly frightening listening to all the talk about doing beans on beans in 2022.
Greg talks about the history of the battle against nematodes and where we can make improvements and the mission of the SCN Coalition. He also talks about the shortcomings of the way things are done right now and what farmers can do to get a leg up in the battle.
It's an interesting situation to be in. I don't know that I can remember having this discussion about beans on beans in the 30-some years I've worked at Iowa State. But it underscores kind of something that we really could do a better job at in farming in the state of Iowa, and that is sampling our fields for soybean cyst nematode. And we're kind of on autopilot. In the early, mid-1990s, we had a project called the SCN Coalition. It was funded by the Soybean Checkoff, and the message was to have farmers test their fields to know if they have cyst nematode. Then it was easy. All they had to do was pick a resistant soybean variety and grow it, and any variety would work. And that approach worked for 15, 20 years through the decade of the 90s and the 2000s. But there was a problem brewing underground, excuse the pun, and the problem was that all those resistant soybeans had the same resistance genes. It was called PI 88788 is a breeding line. And so imagine using the same herbicide active ingredient for 20 or 25 years. I think farmers can understand how that would lose its effectiveness. The same thing has happened with the commonly found resistance from PI 88788. So now we're in a situation where SCN's widespread. The nematode has become comfortable on the PI 88788 resistance, and we can barely get the other unusual source of resistance in varieties. It's called Peking. And so we've got to kind of give our attention back to the problem and manage it more holistically now.
Greg talks about other options that are available to combat SCN. He also talks about crop rotation, scouting your fields, and also changing up what chemicals and seed treatments you're using in your fields. He also puts the nematode losses in perspective with our higher soybean markets.
Yeah, so if you were a farmer who knew where SCN was on your farm and you knew what fields were really bad and what fields weren't, then those really bad fields would be a great place to put your corn acres. There's got to be corn acres. We're not going to stop growing corn in Iowa this year. And so that would be a perfect place for using those really expensive inputs, is to grow corn in your worst SCN fields. And then you would grow beans on beans in the other fields. If you don't have that option, then you're growing beans on beans. You got to assume you've got it bad, and you got to make sure you're growing a good resistant soybean. It's getting kind of late in the game to switch varieties and so forth, but it'd be great if you were growing some varieties with the Peking source of resistance. And then there's seed treatments that are offered now that provide some nematode protection. And so you might ought to consider adding a seed treatment, and that's a little more cost to the cost of your seed, but prices are good right now, and so it's maybe more affordable now than ever before. And I know that farmers like the high prices and it's more profitability, but it makes the yield loss from soybean cyst nematode all the more expensive. A 10 bushel per acre yield loss at $9 beans is one thing. A $10 or 10 bushel yield loss at $17 beans is even more money that's being lost or left in the field. So there's money to be gained by managing SCN in 2022.
Now, of course, the battle doesn't end with the chemicals and the treatments we use during the year. It will continue into this fall. Tylka talks about what you need to be doing this fall after your soybeans are out of the field to be better prepared for the fight in 2023.
The attention should probably turn towards 2023, and it's the best time to sample fields in preparation for the 2023 season. And assuming we're back in a corn bean rotation, that means sampling fields in the fall that are in corn stalks that'll be rotated to soybeans. But assuming we also have a fair number of beans on beans fields, there'll be plenty of bean fields sampled this fall as well. But really, what needs to be sampled are fields that are going to be cropped to soybeans in 2023.
Learn more at thescncoalition.com. And just like that, we're at the end of another episode of Ag Matters PM. We thank you for watching. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and find all of our video content as well as previous episodes of AMPM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget about our free twice daily market podcasts that are available through Amazon, Google, Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, on behalf of Riley Smith and one last time, Brent Barnett, I'm Dustin Huffman. Thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.